"This hearing was never about the truth," the president's man said, his voice now steel, his gaze locked on the crumbling senator. "It was about revenge." Senator Rand Paul, his face ashen, could only stare as the audio of his own corrupt bargain echoed in the silent, cavernous hearing room. President Donald Trump, watching from the Oval Office, had just turned the tables in the most devastating way imaginable. The morning air in Washington, D.C. was thick with the manufactured tension of a political spectacle. Inside the Hart Senate office building, the stage was set. Bright lights beat down on a long, polished dais, cameras lined the walls like a firing squad, and a low murmur of anticipation filled the gallery. This was Senator Rand Paul's arena, and he was ready for a kill. He had called an emergency hearing of the Senate Oversight Committee. The target: President Donald Trump's bold new government efficiency initiative. On paper, the initiative was everything the American people wanted. A ruthless, top-to-bottom audit of federal spending designed to slash waste, fire useless bureaucrats, and return billions of taxpayer dollars to the Treasury. It was pure, undiluted Trump, a powerful common-sense plan to drain the swamp. Leading the initiative was Tom Donovan, a man personally chosen by the president. Donovan was a titan of industry who had left $1 billion private sector career to serve his country. He was sharp, patriotic, and fiercely loyal to the president's America First vision. He was also completely incorruptible, which made him the perfect instrument for Trump's agenda and the perfect target for a man like Rand Paul. From his perch as chairman, Senator Paul saw the initiative not as a service to the nation, but as an encroachment on his personal brand. He was, in his own mind, the sole arbiter of fiscal conservatism. With a law degree and a well-practiced scowl, he saw himself as an intellectual giant, and he seethed with a quiet jealousy at the decisive, action-oriented populism of Donald Trump. So he had schemed. For weeks his staff had worked in the shadows, not to find truth, but to create a narrative. They had cherry-picked emails, sliced sentences in half, and twisted data until they had crafted a tapestry of lies. The hearing was not an investigation. It was a pre-planned ambush designed to humiliate Donovan and wound the president on live television. Paul walked into the room with the smug, self-satisfied grin of a man who believes he's the smartest person in any room he enters. Miles away, in the quiet, focused calm of the Oval Office, President Donald Trump watched a live feed of the hearing on a large monitor. His top aide stood by, a quiet tension in the air. "Sir, Donovan is walking in now," his chief of staff said. "He's reviewed the prep, but you know how Paul can be. He'll turn this into a circus." Trump leaned forward. His eyes narrowed not with worry, but with the intense concentration of a chess master anticipating his opponent's moves 5 steps ahead. He had personally spoken with Donovan the night before. "Tom," he had said, his voice calm and firm, "Paul isn't looking for answers. He's looking for a moment. He's going to lecture you, he's going to talk down to you, and he's going to twist your words. Don't get angry. Just stick to the facts. Let him build his own trap. I'll take care of the rest." President Trump knew Rand Paul's character. He knew the senator's arrogance was a shield for his insecurity, his lectures a cover for his lack of real-world accomplishment. He didn't play defense. He set the board so that his opponent's own aggression would become their downfall. He gestured to a single, unmarked folder on his desk. "Just have this ready," he told an aide. "When I give the word." The hearing began. Paul gavelled it in with a sharp crack, his opening statement a meandering, pompous lecture on the philosophical underpinnings of government oversight, quoting political theorists no one in the room had ever heard of. It was a performance designed to paint himself as a profound thinker, a guardian of liberty. Then came Donovan. He was sworn in, and for the first hour he calmly and masterfully laid out the incredible progress of the efficiency initiative. He spoke of closing entire departments that did nothing but create paperwork, of renegotiating bloated contracts, of saving the American taxpayer nearly $100 billion in just 6 months. He was factual, confident, and unapologetic. Then Paul began his attack. "Mr. Donovan," he started, his voice dripping with condescension, "a noble effort indeed, but let's talk about how you're achieving these savings." He projected an email onto the large screens behind him. It was an email from Donovan, but it was butchered. A single line was highlighted. "We'll have to terminate the Fletcher contract immediately." Paul leaned into his microphone, a predator sensing blood. "The Fletcher contract, for the record, belongs to a small, family-owned business in Ohio. You terminated their contract, quote, immediately. Why, sir? Why the rush to crush a small American business?" Donovan didn't flinch. "Senator, as you know from the full email you have in your possession, the Fletcher Company was charging the government 17 times the market rate for basic office supplies. They were engaged in systemic fraud. Terminating that contract saved the American people $4 million a year. It was my duty." Paul waved his hand dismissively. "Your duty, of course." He put up another email, again just a fragment. "Make sure Big Al gets the message." The senator's eyes gleamed with malicious intent. "Mr. Donovan, who is Big Al? Sounds rather informal. Almost mob-like, wouldn't you say? Is this how the president's business is conducted? With backroom messages to characters named Big Al?" The room started to buzz. The reporters were scribbling furiously. Paul's ambush was working. He was creating a cloud of suspicion, a feeling of impropriety, even where none existed. "Senator, if you had any interest in the truth," Donovan said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "you would know that Big Al is Alistair Monroe, the respected CEO of a logistics company we were auditing. And the message was that he had 48 hours to justify his exorbitant billing or face a federal fraud investigation, which, I might add, he is now under." For another 30 minutes, the assault continued. Paul presented quote after quote, email after email, each one maliciously stripped of its context, each one designed to paint a picture of a corrupt, thuggish operation. Donovan parried every thrust with facts, but the mud was starting to stick. Paul was a master of insinuation, and the media was eating it up. He was winning the battle of perception. In the Oval Office, Trump watched Paul's smug performance. He saw the trap tightening around his man. He saw the narrative beginning to form on the news tickers at the bottom of the screen. He looked at his aide. "It's time," he said, his voice a low, steady command. "Send it." Back in the hearing room, Paul decided it was time to go in for the kill. He leaned back, letting a dramatic pause hang in the air. He looked at Donovan with faux pity. "Mr. Donovan, I have one final exhibit," he said, his voice a low thrum of feigned disappointment. "An email from your office regarding a lucrative government lease for a new consolidated distribution center in Kentucky." He looked directly into the camera. "A lease that was awarded to a company with deep, deep ties to the president's political allies. This is corruption. Pure and simple. It's a swampy backroom deal, and you, sir, are right in the middle of it." He slammed his gavel. "I have no further questions for this witness." But before the sound of the gavel could fade, a frantic aide rushed to Paul's side and whispered urgently in his ear. Paul's face clouded with confusion. At that exact moment, the giant screens behind him, which had been displaying his carefully selected evidence, suddenly went black. A second later, they flashed back to life. But instead of an email, they displayed a single powerful image, the official seal of the President of the United States. A wave of confusion swept the room. Senators looked at each other, murmuring. Paul stared, dumbfounded. Then, a voice filled the chamber. An audio file, crisp and clear, played over the room's powerful sound system. It was unmistakably the voice of Senator Rand Paul. But this was not the self-important, lecturing voice of the hearing. This was a wheedling, conspiratorial voice, recorded just 1 week prior in a private call with none other than Tom Donovan. "Look, Tom," the recorded voice of Senator Paul began, "I get what you're doing with this efficiency thing, I really do. But we have to be practical. This new distribution center, the one in Kentucky, I have a constituent, a very, very important donor, a man we'll just call Big Al." A collective gasp went through the gallery. It was the same name. "Big Al." The recording continued. "Al's company is perfect for this lease, Tom. Perfect. He's been a friend to the party. He's been a friend to me. We need to make sure he gets it. No bidding process, no red tape. Just get it done. You do this for me, and I can make sure your initiative gets very favorable oversight from my committee. You understand what I'm saying, right? We help each other out." The audio file ended, but the silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room was on Rand Paul. The color had drained from his face, leaving a pasty, gray mask of pure horror. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was exposed. He was a fraud. He was a charlatan, caught red-handed trying to use his official power to enrich a donor, the very swampy corruption he claimed to be fighting. Tom Donovan leaned forward, his expression now one of cold, righteous fury. He spoke, his voice ringing with the moral authority he had earned. "Senator," he began, his words cutting through the silence like a surgeon's scalpel. "The man you call Big Al is a Louisville construction magnate with 3 failed federal projects and 2 pending lawsuits for payroll fraud. He is the last person on earth who should get a government contract. I told you that on the phone. I told you we would award the contract only through a fair and open bidding process to the most qualified, lowest-cost applicant." Donovan stood up, his towering presence commanding the room. "This hearing was never about the truth," he said, his voice now steel, his gaze locked on the crumbling senator. "It was about revenge. Revenge because I refused to play your dirty games. Revenge because I wouldn't sell out the American taxpayer to line your donors' pockets." He gestured to the screen, where the presidential seal still shone brightly. "President Trump gave me one mission, to serve the American people with integrity. And that is exactly what we are doing." Rand Paul stared, his political career flashing before his eyes. He fumbled for his gavel, his hand shaking. He brought it down with a weak, pathetic tap. This hearing is adjourned," he stammered, before practically fleeing the dais, his empire of arrogance reduced to rubble in a single, brilliant move. In the Oval Office, President Trump watched the chaos unfold. He didn't smile. He simply nodded, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He had protected his man, he had saved his initiative, and more importantly, he had shown the American people what real strength and real leadership looked like. It wasn't found in pompous lectures and deceitful traps. It was found in foresight, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. The grandstander's gambit had failed, defeated by a president who was always one step ahead. The audio file ended, but the silence that followed was deafening. What do you think was going through Senator Paul's mind at that exact moment his own voice betrayed him? Let us know your take on this dramatic climax. And for more stories of truth and triumph, make sure to subscribe to the channel.